Welcome back. It's always comforting to have you here again, settling in with the quiet warmth of another evening. Maybe you've dimmed the lights, maybe you're already resting in your favorite spot, or maybe you're just letting your breathing slow down after a long day. Wherever you are, and however you feel in this moment, I'm grateful you've chosen to spend this peaceful time with me. If you're unwinding, drifting, or simply letting your mind rest gently at the edges of sleep, let's begin tonight's journey softly, step by step, with history that asks nothing of you except curiosity and calm attention. Tonight's story invites us to walk slowly into one of the oldest and most comforting mysteries of all. The idea that countless civilizations once lived, breathed, dreamed, and thrived long before our own families ever took their first steps, tells us exactly the mood we're entering. A serene exploration of the forgotten, the hidden, and the wonderfully unknown. And before we fully sink into the details, I want to gently ask you something. Something that might quietly awaken a curiosity inside you without disturbing your relaxation. Have you ever wondered how many human stories have vanished into the silence of time? How many civilizations rose, built, traded, created, loved, and then simply disappeared, leaving only faint traces beneath layers of soil, sand, and forgotten memory? How many ancient footsteps lie beneath our modern cities, under roads we drive on, under oceans we stare across, under forests that have grown for thousands of years? And perhaps even more quietly, have you ever thought about how many human lives, full of laughter and hardships, once shaped this world long before anyone wrote down their names? These questions aren't meant to stir your mind sharply. They're simply a gentle invitation, a soft doorway into imagining the world not as it is right now, but as it once was, thousands or even tens of thousands of years before you or I were ever here. You see, the idea of lost civilizations isn't simply about ruins or monuments or broken pottery. It's about the human experience behind those remains. It's about the people who lived entire lifetimes in worlds we no longer remember. People who woke up at sunrise just like we do. People who prepared meals, who shared stories, who looked at the stars at night and wondered about their place in the universe. And sometimes, if we listen closely enough, it almost feels as if those ancient worlds still whisper to us. Not loudly, not clearly, but softly, through the pieces they left behind. But here is something truly fascinating. We used to believe that the story of humans began only a few thousand years ago, with the rise of cities like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and ancient China. But the more we study the layers of Earth, the more we uncover ruins beneath ruins, and forgotten cities beneath older forgotten cities. And every new discovery suggests that humanity's past is far bigger, far older, and far more mysterious than we once imagined. And while many of us grew up hearing familiar tales, the pyramids, the ancient Greeks, the Romans, the kings and queens of Europe, these are only the surface stories, the easy ones, the ones that survived because they left behind stone or writing or large monuments impossible to ignore. But the truly ancient civilizations, the ones lost thousands of years before written history, belong to a world wrapped in silence, a world we're only beginning to rediscover. So before we step into specific examples, before we talk about vanished cities and mysterious temples, I want us to start with the most important idea of all. Civilizations disappear far more easily than we imagine. It doesn't take a dramatic event. It doesn't require a war or a catastrophe. It simply requires time. Time is the greatest eraser in human history. Time softens stone, scatters families, covers artifacts with soil, and wraps entire cultures in layers of forgetfulness. A village left alone becomes a forest within a generation. A city abandoned becomes a mountain of sand in a century. And after 1,000 years, even its name might vanish forever. So when we talk about lost civilizations, we're not speaking about myths or fantasies. We're speaking about the natural way the world works. The world forgets. Nature reclaims. Memory fades, but traces survive. Whispers survive. Clues survive. And that is where our journey begins. Imagine standing somewhere quiet, maybe a long, open field or a desert plain, and knowing that beneath your feet lies the buried outline of a forgotten settlement. A home, a workshop, maybe an ancient marketplace where people once traded cloth, grains, stones, and stories. The earth beneath us is full of memories like that. Everywhere across the world, archaeologists have begun uncovering evidence of civilizations far older and more complex than we expected. From South America to the Middle East, from Asia to Europe, from the cold edges of Siberia to the sunlit areas of North Africa, new technologies like ground-penetrating radar have revealed hidden structures, foundations of ancient buildings, lost roads, and forgotten networks of human life. And here's the part that fascinates me most, and maybe it'll gently intrigue you too, even as you relax deeper. For every civilization we've discovered, there are likely dozens we haven't. Dozens that lie untouched. Dozens that may never be found. Civilizations erased so completely that even the earth struggles to remember them. But why does this matter? Why does the idea of lost civilizations comfort us, even as it fascinates us? Maybe because it reminds us that humanity is ancient and resilient, that long before modern technology, long before electricity, long before our grandparents and great-grandparents walked the earth, humans were already building, experimenting, creating, surviving, and dreaming. There is something soothing in knowing that we are part of a story much older than ourselves. A story that stretches far beyond the limits of recorded history. A story older than empires, older than writing, older than even the earliest legends. And tonight, as we move calmly through these ideas, I want you to picture something softly. Picture a world where the first farmers planted seeds in soil that had never before been touched by human hands. Picture craftsmen shaping tools from stone not for battle, but for building homes and carving art. Picture families gathering around firelight in communities long forgotten, sharing stories we will never hear, stories passed from generation to generation until one day they stopped. And that silence, that gentle, natural silence, is where civilizations fade. But here's another quiet curiosity. Some of these civilizations may not have thought of themselves as lost at all. They lived their lives, raised their children, brewed their drinks, carved their symbols, and simply existed. They weren't waiting to be written into history books. They weren't trying to leave behind a legacy. They were living in their moment, just as we are in ours. And maybe that's why exploring them brings a strange comfort. It reminds us that life is more than record-keeping, more than monuments, more than what survives. Life is lived in the everyday, and that part never changes. As we continue deeper into this journey tonight, we'll walk gently into the first mysteries, the quiet rise of ancient communities, the ways they formed, the ways they thrived, and the ways they eventually faded. But for now, stay with this thought. The world beneath us is filled with stories older than writing, older than kingdoms, older than any map we've ever drawn. And each story begins with the same quiet truth. Humans have always been curious. They have always explored. They have always created. And they have always eventually vanished, leaving behind echoes for us to discover much later, in moments of calm like this one. Tonight's journey is just beginning, and as you continue to breathe softly, listening at your own pace, we'll uncover these forgotten worlds together, not with urgency, but with peaceful curiosity. Because some histories are not meant to be rushed. They are meant to be felt slowly, like distant memories returning to the surface. And now, when you're ready, we'll continue. It's easy to imagine civilizations as unshakable, as though once a community builds homes, farms, and traditions, it will naturally continue on forever. But history tells a much softer, stranger story. One where time, nature, and even quiet choices slowly reshape entire human worlds. And so tonight, as we move deeper into the mysteries of forgotten societies, we gently explore the question: why do civilizations vanish at all? Not with fear, not with drama, but with curiosity. The kind that rests comfortably in the background of your thoughts. To begin, let's reflect on something simple. A civilization doesn't need a catastrophe to disappear. Sometimes all it takes is a gentle shift. A river changing course, a drought passing through, a forest growing where fields once were. Nature has always been the quiet sculptor of human destiny, nudging people from place to place long before they ever understood the forces shaping their world. Imagine a small ancient village near a river. For generations, that river fed crops, carried fish, and gave the community life. But rivers are living things too. They move, they meander, they dry, they flood. If one day that river drifted away from the village, even by a few miles, everything would change. The people would move, homes would be abandoned, tools would be left behind, and within a century, that once busy place would be covered in soil, plants, and silence. No disaster, no conflict, just time quietly doing what it always does. And perhaps the most gentle yet powerful force behind so many lost civilizations is migration. Humans have always followed food, water, warmth, and opportunity. If a region became too cold, too dry, or too unstable, people moved, not out of fear but out of practicality. They took with them only what they could carry. They left behind the rest. And in that simple act, they left behind clues for us to discover thousands of years later. Another peaceful explanation for disappearance lies in cultural blending. Many civilizations didn't truly vanish. They simply became part of others. Their stories merged, their languages shifted, and their identities faded into larger groups. Over generations, their unique features softened until the memories of who they once were simply dissolved into the flow of history. This kind of disappearance is gentle, almost comforting. It reminds us that identity is fluid, and cultures grow the way rivers do, merging, dividing, changing direction without ever fully stopping. But there's another layer to this mystery, one that adds just a touch more intrigue. Some civilizations were so small, so isolated, or so early in history that they left almost nothing behind at all. No writing, no monuments, no walls, no carvings, just faint traces in the soil or a handful of tools buried deep underground. To us, it may feel like they vanished, but for them, They were simply living their lives without any expectation that someone far in the future would want to study their footsteps. Humanity is ancient, but memory is young. And perhaps that's why the idea of lost civilizations feels both mysterious and peaceful at the same time, because it reminds us that life continues whether or not it's remembered. People lived full lives long before their names, traditions, or struggles were ever recorded. But even though many civilizations disappeared quietly, some left behind puzzles that deepen our curiosity, especially when we consider how advanced they were for their time. This contrast between sophistication and disappearance is one of the most gentle hooks in the study of ancient history. For example, imagine a community with early knowledge of astronomy, farming, art, and craftsmanship, all thousands of years before the civilizations we usually think of as ancient. How does such a community rise and then vanish without leaving written memories? How does complexity disappear so naturally that only foundations or artifacts remain? This question leads many historians to a quiet possibility. Humans have likely built, lost, rebuilt, and lost civilizations far more times than we can count. Not in dramatic cycles, but in soft waves, rising as communities grow, fading when they disperse, rising again in new places with new ideas. And as we uncover more ruins, more buried cities, and more forgotten settlements, one idea becomes increasingly likely. The history we know is only a fraction of the history that happened. This realization doesn't need to feel overwhelming. It can feel freeing, like discovering that humanity's story is far deeper and richer than we ever learned in school. Because if so many civilizations rose and fell before writing even existed, then our human story stretches much further back than we ever imagined. And sitting with that thought quietly invites a sense of wonder. Another reason civilizations disappear is environmental change. Not sudden, devastating change, but slow and steady transitions that gently reshape the land. When forests expanded, people moved. When deserts grew, people relocated. When coastlines shifted, communities adapted by leaving behind what they could no longer maintain. And these changes often took centuries, long enough that families didn't think of themselves as leaving a civilization behind. They were simply responding to nature, just as animals migrate with the seasons. The land remembers their footprints even when their descendants forget. But one of the softest and most human reasons civilizations disappear is choice. People sometimes leave places behind intentionally, seeking better land, better weather, safety, or opportunity. Homes become empty not because something terrible happened, but because life moved forward somewhere else. You may have experienced small versions of this yourself. Neighborhoods changing, old family homes becoming quiet, places once full of life becoming still. Civilizations experience similar cycles, only on a larger and slower scale. And now, imagine those cycles stretched out over thousands of years. Imagine how many layers of human life lie beneath our feet. And imagine how many stories have quietly faded, not because they were erased, but because their time simply ended. As we move deeper into this exploration, it helps to think of lost civilizations not as tragedies, but as reminders of how beautifully dynamic human life has always been. Every disappearance makes space for new beginnings. Every forgotten settlement was once a thriving home. Every abandoned city was once filled with voices, stories, laughter, and daily routines that made perfect sense in their time. This perspective brings us to a gentle truth. Civilizations don't truly die. They transform. They shift into the soil, into the cultures that follow them, into the artifacts left behind. They become part of the Earth's memory. And occasionally, when archaeologists uncover a structure or an object that shouldn't exist for its time period, something too advanced, too precise, or too sophisticated, it reminds us that our understanding is still incomplete. These discoveries act as quiet rehooks, pulling us closer to the mystery. For example, discovering ancient stone structures aligned with celestial patterns thousands of years before recorded astronomy challenges what we thought we knew about human knowledge. Finding early agricultural settlements that thrived long before major civilizations were believed to exist reshapes the timeline entirely. These aren't signs of anything supernatural. They're reminders that humans have always been intelligent, curious, observant, and inventive. We simply lost the records of many early chapters. Civilizations leave echoes in the soil, in the ruins, in the shifting patterns of ancient land. And even though many disappeared naturally, their existence adds richness to our understanding of what it means to be human. And as you drift a little deeper into the calm of the moment, imagine this. If so many worlds existed and vanished long before written memory, how many more might still be hidden beneath forests, deserts, and oceans? How many stories are still waiting to be uncovered? And how many civilizations might have shaped the earliest foundations of the world we live in today? These questions don't need answers right now. They simply create a quiet space for imagination, a gentle pull toward curiosity without disturbing your rest. The mystery continues in the next part, and when you're ready, we'll move forward together. Among all the lost civilizations and forgotten communities scattered across the ancient world, there is one place that quietly reshapes everything we thought we knew about early humanity. It doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't tower like a pyramid or blaze with gold like an ancient palace. Instead, it sits quietly on a hill in southeastern Turkey, covered by thousands of years of soil, waiting patiently for the modern world to notice it. This place is known today as Göbekli Tepe, and its story whispers one of the most intriguing mysteries in the history of human civilization. As we move into this part of our journey, let's approach it gently, the way an archaeologist brushes dust from a stone. Imagine hearing about a place older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than every well-known ancient structure we learned about in school, and yet far more advanced than anything we expected from its time. It's a hint that humans were building complex, meaningful structures long before anyone believed possible. Göbekli Tepe was built at a time when humans were thought to be simple hunter-gatherers, wandering in small groups, following animals, and living in temporary shelters. According to the old timeline of human development, such people were not supposed to build monumental stone temples. They were not supposed to carve intricate artwork into massive pillars. And they were certainly not supposed to gather in large numbers for spiritual or ceremonial purposes. Yet they did. And because they did, historians have been rethinking everything. Slowly, carefully, but unmistakably, Göbekli Tepe has become a place that changes the story of humanity, not with noise or drama, but with quiet, undeniable evidence. Let's imagine it softly now, as if we're walking through it in the gentle evening light. Stone pillars rising from circular enclosures. Animals carved with exquisite detail. Foxes, snakes, birds, lions, creatures that still lived in the region thousands of years ago. Pillars arranged in perfect symmetry, positioned with intention and precision. A structure that could only have been built by people who cooperated, planned, communicated, and believed in something greater than themselves. And here is where the mystery deepens. Göbekli Tepe was built over 11,000 years ago. That is nearly twice as old as the oldest cities we thought existed. It was built long before agriculture was fully established, before permanent villages were common, before humans were known to carve stone on such a grand scale. So the question rises, gently but insistently, who were the people that built it? And how did they do it? We don't know their names, their language, their beliefs, or even what they called this place. But we do know that they shared a kind of collective purpose, enough to inspire the creation of a monumental structure that would outlast them by millennia. Perhaps what makes this place so mesmerizing is that it challenges the comfortable order of the historical timeline. For so long, we believed the pattern went like this: first farming, then villages, then settlements, then religion, then monumental architecture. But Göbekli Tepe quietly turns that sequence upside down. It suggests something profound. Maybe people came together for spiritual or communal reasons before they settled down into farming life. Maybe the desire to gather, to connect, to create something meaningful was so strong that it eventually led to agriculture. Not the other way around. This idea reshapes how we understand early humans. It paints them not as primitive wanderers but as deeply thoughtful, observant beings who sought connection and expression long before they had permanent homes. And here's a gentle thought to sit with. What if early humans were not simply surviving, but already dreaming? Göbekli Tepe hints at a community that invested time, skill, and imagination into creating a place that meant something. A place that required coordination and shared vision. These early builders were not just reacting to nature, they were shaping their world. But just as fascinating as its construction is the mystery of its disappearance. One of the strangest facts about Göbekli Tepe is that it was deliberately buried. Not destroyed, not abandoned, buried, covered intentionally with tons of soil, as if the people who built it wanted to preserve it, or hide it, or mark the end of its purpose. Imagine that for a moment, an ancient community coming together, not only to build a monumental structure, but to bury it later with equal effort. Why would they do that? What did it mean to them? Was it a ritual farewell? A cultural transformation? A symbolic ending of an era? No one knows. And that unknowing is part of the quiet beauty of this place. Some archaeologists believe that the people who built Göbekli Tepe eventually transitioned into farming communities nearby, slowly adapting to a new lifestyle. Others think the site may have been a ceremonial center for different groups, a gathering place rather than a settlement. But the truth remains hidden beneath layers of time. Another curiosity lies in the artwork. The carvings are too detailed to belong to a society with no tools or artistic tradition. The arrangements are too precise to be accidental. The structure itself is too advanced to be the result of simple trial and error. This raises yet another gentle question. If early humans were capable of building such complexity 11,000 years ago, how many other complex structures might have existed and been lost to time? If Göbekli Tepe remained hidden under soil for thousands of years, how many more ancient wonders lie buried beneath sand dunes, forests, and forgotten valleys? Here is another soft curiosity. Many of the animals carved at Göbekli Tepe were not merely decorations. Some appear to represent constellations, hints that the builders may have had early forms of astronomical knowledge. Perhaps they watched the stars for patterns, used them to guide rituals, or followed seasonal movements for hunting. If this is true, then these ancient people weren't living in darkness. They were observing the heavens with clarity and intention. They were connected to the natural world in ways we are only beginning to understand. Another surprising detail: the stone pillars weigh tons. Yet the people of that time had no metal tools, no wheels, and no animals for labor. They would have carved and moved these stones with tools made from flint and bone, using teamwork and sheer human coordination. The effort itself tells a story, one of shared purpose, trust, cooperation, and something inside them that reached toward meaning. And perhaps that's the softest truth woven into this mystery. Long before recorded history, humans were already connected by shared purpose. Even without writing, without cities, without formal architecture, they understood the value of creating something sacred. Göbekli Tepe gives us a glimpse of a world where people relied on their hands, their minds, and each other. A world where rituals, symbols, and community mattered deeply. A world where humans expressed wonder not with books or temples, but with stone and silence. The most calming part of this mystery is that even though we may never know exactly why the site was built, or who built it, its existence shows that our ancestors were far more capable, thoughtful, and spiritual than we previously believed. It's a reminder that humanity has always reached for meaning, that curiosity is ancient, that connection is ancient, that creativity is ancient, and that the desire to build something that outlasts us is older than any recorded story. As Göbekli Tepe continues to be studied, new layers are discovered, chambers beneath chambers, structures beneath structures. Each discovery whispers the same gentle truth. The past is deeper than we think. And tonight, as you rest with this idea, let it settle softly in your mind. If a civilization capable of building something this advanced existed more than 11,000 years ago, then how many more civilizations may have risen and vanished long before our history even began? This question doesn't need an answer. It simply invites wonder, the soothing kind that makes history feel alive even in its silence. Göbekli Tepe is just the beginning of these mysteries. And whenever you're ready, we'll continue to the next forgotten world together. The silent builders of Çatalhöyük. If the oldest layers of human history were a vast, dimly lit museum, then Çatalhöyük would be one of those quiet galleries where the air feels a little heavier, where you instinctively lower your voice, and where every surface seems to whisper a story you can almost hear, but never fully grasp. It is a place that asks you to lean in, to listen, to wonder, and perhaps the most extraordinary thing about it is this: Çatalhöyük existed long before writing, long before cities were supposed to exist, long before humans were believed to build and plan in such organized ways. Yet here it stands, or rather, here it once stood around 9,000 years ago, a thriving settlement older than most of the civilizations we celebrate today. But the silence surrounding it, that's what draws us in. The more we learn, the more questions appear, like shadows forming behind the lamplight. Let's begin with one quietly astonishing detail that often surprises even seasoned historians. This ancient city had no streets, none at all. Homes were built so closely together that people walked across the rooftops, moving around the city almost like gentle steps across flat, sun-warmed stones. Imagine that, a city where the road was above your head, not in front of you. People didn't enter through doors on the ground. Instead, They climbed in and out through openings in the ceiling, using ladders as their daily route into the world. And that small detail immediately opens a new question. What kind of civilization chooses to erase streets altogether? Why did they build upward instead of outward? Was it safety, climate, a shared belief, or was it something else? Something we have not yet decoded? This is the delicate magnetism of Catalhoyuk. Every answered question softly reveals another unanswered one. Inside those roof-entered homes, the world becomes even more fascinating. Each house was a warm, clay-coated chamber, decorated with murals and reliefs, silent art from people who could not write, yet somehow expressed their lives in symbols, animals, abstract shapes, and scenes we still interpret only in fragments. Some murals show hunting, others show geometric patterns, and some depict figures in poses we cannot quite explain, as if the artists were leaving messages that would only make sense to those who lived alongside them. And yet, even with all this art, Catalhoyuk left behind no rulers, no kings, no palaces, no clear hierarchy, at least none that we've found. That alone is incredible. Humans are known to form hierarchies quickly, leaders, followers, structures of authority. But Catalhoyuk appears to have lived cooperatively, with homes nearly identical in size and structure. No home stands out as belonging to someone more important. No central building dominates the city. And this raises one of the most calming yet powerful questions we can ask. Could one of the world's earliest cities have been built on equality? A shared life rather than a divided one? The idea is gentle, but profound. But there's another detail, one that gives Catalhoyuk an emotional nuance unlike almost any other ancient settlement. People buried their dead under their floors, under the rooms where they lived, cooked, slept, raised children. The ancestors were part of daily life, literally supporting the home from beneath. What did that feel like to them? Was it comforting? Did they feel watched over, protected? Or was it simply tradition, something so normal that no one thought twice? We'll never know their inner feelings, but archaeologists have found that some homes contained many burials through generations. Family lines layered into the earth like soft geological history. And sometimes, a skull was removed from a burial, carefully plastered, and displayed within the home, not as something frightening, but almost as a cherished memory preserved. It makes us ask quietly, what did remembrance look like in a world with no writing? How did they hold onto their history when they had no words to record it? Perhaps that is why Catalhoyuk feels so mysterious. It preserved memories not on paper or stone tablets, but through rituals, architecture, and the very arrangement of life and death in the same space. Another curiosity lies in the way their city expanded. When a home began to wear down, or if it became too full of burials, the family simply built a new home directly on top of it. Layer upon layer, rising through time. Catalhoyuk is not one city but a vertical timeline of dozens upon dozens of rebuilt homes. This slow upward growth means the settlement literally thickened with history. Imagine living in a place where the world beneath your feet held centuries of stories. Not metaphorically, but truly layers of ancestors, layers of memories, layers of moments lived and forgotten. It draws us in, doesn't it? That soft, almost haunting idea of life built upon life. But here's where the intrigue deepens. Despite all this sophistication, Catalhoyuk had no defensive walls. no fortifications, nothing to indicate they lived in fear of invasion. Was it peace, isolation, or simply a time before organized warfare reached this part of the world? For a settlement of several thousand people, the absence of protection is unusual, and yet no weapon hordes have been found, no evidence of major conflict. Perhaps human communities once knew longer periods of calm than we imagine. Now, let's add another layer of curiosity, something that surprises almost everyone when they first hear it. With so many people living so closely, sometimes thousands at once, Catalhoyuk had no large central gathering area. No plaza, no temple, no forum, nothing like the spaces we associate with later cities. But the art inside homes suggests a deeply spiritual life. Bull's horns embedded into walls, shrines decorated with animal reliefs, paintings refreshed repeatedly, almost lovingly, as if tending to them was part of a daily rhythm. Archaeologists believe that instead of one grand central place of worship, every home had spiritual corners, tiny sanctuaries of meaning, a household spirituality rather than a public one. That idea is calming too. The thought of small sacred spaces in each home, places where daily life and quiet reflection blended seamlessly. But for all these wonders, Catalhoyuk eventually vanished. Not suddenly, there is no sign of catastrophe, but gradually, like a candle slowly burning out. People left, houses were abandoned, the city thinned, emptied, and fell silent. And the reasons why remain elusive. Did the river shift, changing their water supply? Did farming practices exhaust the land? Did climate gradually shift? Or did people simply choose to leave one family at a time, seeking something new? Civilizations don't only fall because of disaster. Sometimes they fade because life changes step by step, choice by choice. Sometimes change is gentle. Still, the disappearance of Catalhoyuk brings another question. A soft one, the kind that settles into the mind slowly. How many civilizations have vanished not because they were destroyed, but because they simply changed direction? How many human stories have ended quietly, without tragedy, without collapse, just drifted away like evening smoke? As we imagine the people walking the rooftop pathways of Catalhoyuk, living among murals and ancestral memories, we can't help but reflect on something almost comforting. Human creativity is far older than we think. Cities came earlier, art came earlier, spirituality came earlier, community came earlier. And when we look at this ancient settlement, almost 9,000 years old, it whispers gently, "We were builders long before history remembered us. We were dreamers long before writing captured dreams. We were organized long before anyone believed it possible. And yet, despite these achievements, they left behind no stories in words, no explanations, no names, just rooftops, murals, bones, and the faint blueprint of a civilization that lived in a way strangely different, and yet strangely familiar." In Catalhoyuk, we see the beginnings of a human pattern that continues to this day. People gather, people build, people decorate their homes with meaning, people honor their dead, people adapt, people move on. Perhaps the most profound part of Catalhoyuk's legacy is not its mystery but its familiarity. Because even though it is one of the oldest cities ever discovered, its quiet habits echo softly into our lives today. We still form communities. We still decorate walls with memories. We still keep reminders of loved ones in our homes. We still seek connection, stability, meaning, and continuity. Time changes the tools, the materials, the scale, but the heart of human life remains steady. That is why the story of Catalhoyuk feels so calming, almost comforting. It reminds us that even the earliest chapters of humanity were filled with creativity, care, ritual, and connection. Life was not simply survival. It was expression. It was shared experience. It was home. And perhaps that is the final question this ancient city leaves us with, one more gentle curiosity to hold in your thoughts. If Catalhoyuk held thousands of stories we will never fully uncover, how many more stories lie buried across the world, waiting quietly beneath the earth, carrying memories of people who lived, loved, created, and vanished long before history began? A question with no answer, and that is exactly what keeps us turning the pages of humanity's oldest mysteries. The lost city of Murgar. As we move gently forward in our exploration of humanity's earliest civilizations, we arrive at a place that is quieter in fame but remarkable in discovery. A site that whispers of a time when humans first began to farm, to domesticate animals, and to settle in one place long before the great empires of Mesopotamia or Egypt. This place is Murgar, located in what is now Pakistan, in the broad expanse of the Indus Valley region. And its story offers a soft, compelling glimpse into the origins of settled human life. Murgar emerged more than 9,500 years ago, making it one of the oldest known farming communities in the world. Unlike some of the more monumental civilizations that followed, Murgar was modest, simple homes made of mud brick, storage areas for grain, small tools, and pottery. And yet, within this simplicity lies an extraordinary complexity that has fascinated archaeologists and historians alike. It is a place where humanity's quiet ingenuity first begins to show in ways that ripple forward across time. Imagine, softly, the people of Murgar waking in the early morning. The sun rises slowly over the broad valley. Fields of wheat and barley sway gently in the breeze. Goats and cattle stir nearby, the first domesticated animals helping to shape human life in ways that would echo for millennia. Families emerge from their mud brick homes to tend crops, to carry water, to care for animals, the beginnings of organized, settled life. And yet, even in this seemingly ordinary daily rhythm, there is a subtle sense of wonder, because these were humans experimenting with permanence. Humans learning to grow food in one place instead of following animals across the landscape. Humans beginning to shape the environment rather than simply responding to it. And in that experimentation, they laid the groundwork for cities, trade, and civilizations to come. One of the most fascinating aspects of Murgar is its pottery. Early on, residents began to craft simple, yet beautifully functional, pots and containers for storage and cooking. Over time, their techniques improved. Designs became more intricate. Some pieces were painted with geometric patterns or symbolic motifs. Each object tells a quiet story of skill, observation, and the human desire to make the world both functional and beautiful. Imagine holding such a piece today, thinking of the hands that shaped it, the care taken to create it, the lives it held within its walls. And yet, Murgar was not just about survival. Its inhabitants developed early forms of ritual and expression. Burials have been found beneath homes, echoing practices we saw in Catalhoyuk. Some graves included personal items, beads, or ornaments, hinting at a belief in an afterlife or a desire to honor the dead in a tangible way. Here, life and death coexisted side by side, quietly integrated into daily existence. The pace of life in Murgar seems slow and intentional. Unlike the bustling cities of later millennia, this was a community that expanded steadily over centuries. And as it grew, it laid the foundations for the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the largest and most sophisticated early civilizations in the world. Murgar may have been modest in scale, but it was monumental in its influence. And yet, as with all the civilizations we've explored so far, there is a mystery. Murgar eventually declined and was largely abandoned around 5000 BC. The reasons are subtle and layered. Not a sudden catastrophe, not an invasion or war, but perhaps environmental change, shifts in trade routes, or gradual migration to larger settlements elsewhere. Like sand slipping gently through fingers, life moved on, leaving behind traces that modern archaeologists now uncover layer by layer. Consider this quietly. The people of Murgar didn't vanish in a dramatic event. They adapted, moved, and blended into new communities. Their innovations, agriculture, animal domestication, pottery, lived on, carried forward by the next generations. In a sense, Murgar didn't end. It transformed. It became part of something larger, invisible yet essential, shaping civilizations we know from history books. And this transformation invites reflection. How many other communities, less studied, less preserved, quietly disappeared in the same way? How many early settlements helped shape the world without leaving monumental evidence, yet left their fingerprints on human progress? It is both humbling and comforting to consider that human innovation often grows in small, steady steps rather than sudden leaps. Another quietly fascinating element of Murgar is its craftsmanship beyond pottery. Archaeologists have found early evidence of beadmaking, weaving, and tools crafted from copper. These discoveries hint at trade networks extending across regions, long before the more famous cities of Mesopotamia and Egypt engaged in extensive commerce. The people of Murgar were not isolated. They were connected, observing distant regions, sharing ideas, and quietly influencing the future in ways we are only beginning to recognize. And then there is the land itself, the valley, the river systems, the fertile plains that sustained life for thousands of years. Murgar reminds us how intimately humans have always been tied to the natural world. Water, soil, climate, and seasons shaped their daily lives, decisions, and survival. It is a gentle reminder that civilizations are not only human constructs, they are co-creations with the environment. And when environmental shifts occur, whether slowly or suddenly, human settlements adapt, migrate, or transform, often leaving behind a whisper rather than a roar. Imagine that we have uncovered only a fraction of Murgar's secrets. Each excavation brings more understanding, but also more questions. What rituals guided daily life? How did their social structures function? What stories, songs, or beliefs have been lost forever? Every uncovered artifact hints at a deeper world we can only imagine, just as a melody's echo lingers after the music has ended. It is also intriguing to consider the human relationships within Murgar. Families living side by side, connected through labor, trade, and care for one another. Children growing up learning farming, crafting, and the traditions of their elders. Elders passing down knowledge, wisdom, and perhaps even spiritual beliefs. Communities thriving not because of conquest, but because of cooperation, adaptation, and subtle ingenuity. There is a quiet elegance in that, the thought that civilization can flourish gently, organically, and with lasting impact. And, like many ancient communities, Murgar leaves us with soft, unanswered questions. How did they perceive time, death, and the natural world? What dreams did they hold for their children and their settlements? How did they respond to adversity and change, knowing that life was fragile yet precious? The answers may remain forever beyond our grasp, but pondering them invites reflection, and perhaps a sense of peaceful connection across millennia. Another layer of fascination lies in the gradual transition from Murgar to the larger Indus Valley cities, such as Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. These cities inherited agricultural techniques, craft traditions, and perhaps even social structures. They expanded on the quiet foundations laid by early communities like Murgar, transforming modest villages into advanced urban centers. And here again, a gentle pattern emerges. Human progress is not always about dramatic leaps, but about layers of knowledge, passed gently from one generation to the next. This realization invites a comforting thought. Even when civilizations vanish in physical form, their influence persists. Seeds planted by one community may grow into towering cities hundreds or thousands of years later. Human ingenuity has a quiet resilience, sometimes unseen, sometimes uncelebrated, yet undeniably present. And so, as we reflect on Murgar tonight, we are reminded of something essential. The history we know is only the surface. Beneath it lies a vast network of stories, lives, and innovations. Many of them quiet, many of them modest, yet all contributing to the intricate tapestry of human existence. Every layer of soil, every fragment of pottery, every trace of domesticated grain is a testament to lives lived thoughtfully and meaningfully. Finally, imagine standing softly in the valley of Murgar, surrounded by the echoes of thousands of years. Picture families tending their crops, artisans shaping tools, children playing beneath mud-brick homes. Visualize the rhythm of daily life, simple yet profound, building the foundations for the civilizations that followed. And then imagine that, slowly, over centuries, life shifted, people moved on, and the city was left to sleep beneath the earth, its legacy waiting patiently for us to rediscover it. And perhaps that is the gentle lesson Murgar leaves for us tonight. Civilizations may vanish from view, but their influence continues quietly, embedded in the human story, shaping the world in ways we may never fully see, yet which remain vital, present, and alive. The enigmatic civilization of Kerala. Far across time and space, on the coastal plains of what we now call Peru, lies one of the oldest urban centers of the Americas. This city, known as Kerala, emerged over 5,000 years ago, long before the rise of the Inca or the famous civilizations of Mesoamerica. Yet, its story is as remarkable as any we've explored so far. A civilization that thrived quietly, harmoniously, and with extraordinary ingenuity in ways that continue to intrigue historians and archaeologists alike. Kerala was not a sprawling empire. It did not boast massive pyramids like those of Egypt or Mesopotamia. Instead, its power lay in its organization, its architecture, and its human vision. The city consisted of pyramidal structures, plazas, and residential zones, carefully planned with remarkable precision. And although it existed more than 4,500 years ago, the sophistication of its urban planning is nothing short of astonishing. One of the first thoughts that comes to mind is this: how did humans build such organized cities so early in history? Carroll challenges the simple assumption that urban centers arose only after centuries of prior civilizations. Instead, here is a city built deliberately, intentionally, demonstrating that humans were capable of complex social organization, coordinated labor, and long-term planning much earlier than we once believed. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Carroll is the absence of defensive walls or evidence of warfare. This is a quiet, almost poetic idea. A city so advanced, so well-planned, that its people thrived without fortifications or armies. Peace, cooperation, and community formed the backbone of Carroll's endurance. Imagine that: thousands of people living harmoniously, working together, and building a city where the greatest protection was collective effort rather than conquest. And Carroll was not merely functional. Its inhabitants clearly understood aesthetics, culture, and ritual. Large plazas served as ceremonial centers where music, gatherings, and perhaps even religious observances took place. Flutes and other instruments discovered at the site indicate that art, music, and spirituality were integral to daily life. Music, in particular, suggests a gentle cultural continuity, a universal human impulse to create rhythm and harmony. Another fascinating detail is the city's economy, based on a combination of agriculture, fishing, and trade. Carroll's inhabitants cultivated crops like cotton and squash, while simultaneously exploiting the bountiful coastal waters for anchovies and other fish. Trade networks extended to distant regions, linking Carroll with neighboring communities. Through these quiet exchanges, ideas, technologies, and innovations traveled, helping Carroll to flourish without the need for military might or expansionist ambition. And here is a gentle, reflective question: how many other early cities existed in the Americas that we have yet to uncover? Carroll stands as a testament to the human ability to innovate, organize, and thrive, yet its story reminds us that much of history lies buried, waiting quietly for discovery. Each new excavation reveals more layers of human ingenuity, more evidence of how our ancestors solved problems, coordinated labor, and built cohesive societies. It is also worth noting the monumental pyramids of Carroll. While smaller than some of the more famous pyramids elsewhere in the world, their construction demonstrates an extraordinary understanding of engineering. Massive stones, carefully placed, formed platforms and ceremonial spaces that have survived for millennia. These structures required coordination, labor, and foresight, highlighting once again that the people of Carroll were capable of both practical and symbolic achievements. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Carroll, however, is its mysterious decline. Like many ancient civilizations, it was eventually abandoned. Archaeologists suggest that changes in climate, resource availability, or trade dynamics may have gradually led inhabitants to leave the city. There is no evidence of violent collapse, no invasion, no destruction, only a quiet dispersal. And in this gentle disappearance, Carroll reflects a recurring theme in human history. Civilizations often vanish slowly, as life shifts and communities adapt to changing circumstances. And yet, even in decline, Carroll left a profound legacy. Its urban planning, agricultural innovations, and social structures influenced later civilizations in the Andes, including the more famous Inca. Knowledge, once embedded in a community, can travel across generations, even if the original city disappears. Carol, in this sense, reminds us that human progress is cumulative, building softly over centuries, layer by layer. Consider this quietly. A city with pyramids, plazas, trade networks, and music, existing peacefully thousands of years before most recorded history of the Americas. Its sophistication forces us to reconsider long-held assumptions about early human societies. And yet, the people of Carol left no written records, only their physical traces, carefully studied by modern archaeologists. This invites a profound reflection. Much of human history exists not in books, but in soil, stone, and memory. Another fascinating point is that Carol was part of a broader network of settlements along the Soup Valley. While the city itself is often highlighted, surrounding communities contributed to agriculture, trade, and cultural life. This integration suggests that even in ancient times, humans understood interdependence and cooperation on a regional scale. Civilization, it seems, is rarely an isolated endeavor. It thrives best when communities connect, share, and collaborate. And here is a gentle curiosity to linger on. How did early humans coordinate labor without modern communication? How did thousands of people work together to build pyramids, plazas, and irrigation systems without written instructions or technology as we know it today? The answer lies in shared vision, oral tradition, and a collective understanding of purpose. These are skills that may feel distant from us now, yet they are profoundly human, quietly persistent across millennia. It is also notable that Carol's inhabitants prioritize spirituality and culture alongside practicality. Ritual spaces and ceremonial centers suggest a society that valued meaning as much as survival. Music, dance, and communal gatherings were likely central to daily life, strengthening social bonds and reinforcing shared identity. This balance between practicality and cultural life is a hallmark of enduring civilizations, a soft lesson that has echoed across human history. And then, there is the poetic irony of Carol. Despite its advanced urban planning and peaceful coexistence, the city eventually fell into obscurity. For thousands of years, its existence was unknown, buried beneath layers of earth, until rediscovered in the late 20th century. This reminds us that the passage of time is impartial. Even remarkable human achievements can vanish quietly, leaving only traces for future generations to interpret. And perhaps this quiet disappearance is part of what makes these ancient civilizations so captivating. They invite us to imagine life from the perspective of people who built, loved, worked, and created without expectation of fame or recognition. Their legacy is not written in textbooks, but in enduring structures, artifacts, and the subtle imprint of human ingenuity. As we reflect on Carol, another question emerges softly. How many other sophisticated communities existed in the ancient Americas long before the rise of empires we know by name? Each new discovery, a tool, a piece of pottery, a stone foundation, expands our understanding and deepens the mystery. Human history is broader, richer, and far more complex than even the most meticulous records suggest. And so, Carol reminds us of an essential truth about history. It is not only about kings, conquests, or monumental structures. It is about the quiet, steady work of people living meaningful lives. It is about communities creating, adapting, and thriving in harmony with their environment. It is about the cumulative nature of knowledge and innovation, passed softly from one generation to the next. And as you imagine the early morning light over Carol, the gentle sway of crops, the rhythm of daily life, the music of flutes drifting across plazas, you are witnessing a civilization that thrived quietly, harmoniously, and profoundly. Its story, while incomplete, reaches across millennia to remind us that the human spirit, cooperative, creative, and resilient, has always been remarkable. Finally, a quiet thought to carry into reflection. Civilizations rise, flourish, and eventually fade, yet the knowledge, culture, and innovations they create are rarely lost entirely. Carol may have disappeared physically, but its influence persists in subtle ways, shaping societies, inspiring curiosity, and reminding us of the depth and richness of human history. And as we drift further into contemplation, it is comforting to know that every layer of earth, every ancient ruin, and every artifact carries a story waiting to be heard. Stories of human resilience, ingenuity, and quiet brilliance. The forgotten civilization of Norte Chico, far to the north of modern Peru, along the arid coastal plains, lies one of the earliest known civilizations of the Americas, Norte Chico. Unlike the towering pyramids of Egypt or the sprawling cities of Mesopotamia, Norte Chico was quiet, modest, and elegant in its simplicity. Yet its achievements are staggering, especially considering it emerged as early as 3000 BCE, predating much of the more celebrated history of the Americas. The discovery of Norte Chico challenges long-held assumptions about what early civilizations could accomplish. Here was a society that built monumental structures, organized labor, and maintained agricultural systems, all without the use of pottery, writing, or even widespread metallurgy. And yet, the remains of plazas, sunken circular courts, and pyramidal structures reveal a sophistication that speaks volumes about human ingenuity. One of the first questions that arises when studying Norte Chico is this: how did a civilization thrive in such an arid, seemingly inhospitable environment? Rivers flowed intermittently, and rainfall was scarce. Yet the people of Norte Chico engineered irrigation systems, cultivated cotton, and developed complex trade networks to support their communities. They understood their environment deeply, manipulating it carefully and sustainably to support large populations. And the structures they left behind are quietly astonishing. Large pyramids of stone and adobe, some over 60 feet high, were built using labor-intensive methods without metal tools. These pyramids were not tombs, as in Egypt, but ceremonial platforms, possibly centers for communal gatherings, religious observances, or administrative coordination. Imagine standing before one of these structures, its stone surfaces bathed in morning light, sensing the coordinated effort that must have gone into its creation. Another quietly fascinating element of Norte Chico is its economy. Cotton cultivation formed the backbone of trade and industry. It was used to make fishing nets, textiles, and possibly even currency for bartering with neighboring communities. Agriculture was complemented by abundant marine resources. Anchovies, shellfish, and other fish provided protein and nutrition, sustaining a large population without reliance on large domesticated animals. And here is where the gentle hook emerges. Norte Chico thrived without writing. Unlike Mesopotamia or Egypt, there is no evidence of written records, formal inscriptions, or elaborate documentation. Communication, record-keeping, and societal coordination relied entirely on oral tradition, memory, and communal organization. The city flourished not because of bureaucracy or record-keeping, but because of human collaboration, shared knowledge, and trust. Consider this quietly. A civilization capable of engineering monumental pyramids, sustaining agricultural systems, and coordinating large populations without a written language. The implications are profound. Human societies are capable of far more than we often credit them for, and innovation often arises quietly, out of sight, without leaving a direct written trace. Another striking detail of Norte Chico is the urban planning. The city consisted of clusters of buildings connected by carefully laid pathways and sunken plazas. These plazas were not random. They likely served as centers for social and religious life, places where communities gathered to celebrate, deliberate, and reinforce social bonds. Unlike later urban centers, there was no emphasis on hierarchical display, no palaces towering over the masses. Norte Chico appears egalitarian, functional, and purposeful, with social cohesion embedded in the very layout of the city. And yet, like many early civilizations, Norte Chico eventually declined. The reasons are subtle and layered. Archaeologists speculate that climate shifts, changes in river flow, and possibly overuse of agricultural land may have gradually reduced its viability. Unlike civilizations destroyed by invasion or disaster, Norte Chico faded quietly. Families moved, populations dispersed, and monumental structures were left to weather the centuries in silence. This slow, gentle disappearance is a recurring theme in our exploration of lost civilizations. It is neither violent nor catastrophic. Instead, it is a natural consequence of adaptation, resource management, and human choice. Civilizations are alive. They respond to their environment, to opportunity, and to challenges. And when conditions change, people move on. The traces they leave behind are whispers of their existence, waiting patiently for discovery. And here is a soft, reflective question. How many other civilizations existed in the Americas and elsewhere that left even fewer traces than Norte Chico? For every monumental city that survives in ruins, countless others have vanished entirely, leaving only faint traces in soil, pottery shards, or subtle changes in the landscape. Human history is richer and broader than even the most diligent archaeologists can reconstruct. Another intriguing detail is Norte Chico's religious and ceremonial life. The sunken circular plazas may have served ritual purposes, perhaps linked to astronomical observations or seasonal cycles. The emphasis on communal ceremonial spaces suggests that spirituality and social cohesion were deeply intertwined. Even without temples or grand shrines, the people of Norte Chico found ways to anchor their lives in shared ritual and collective experience. And here is a quiet thought to linger on. These early Americans were experimenting with urban life, engineering, trade, agriculture, and community cohesion thousands of years before the rise of empires we typically associate with ancient civilization. It is a reminder that human innovation does not follow a single predictable path. Sometimes it emerges quietly in small valleys, away from the historical spotlight, shaped by environment, necessity, and human collaboration. Trade and connectivity were also quietly central to Norte Chico's success. Cotton, food, and other goods moved along river systems and coastal networks. Communities exchanged materials, skills, and knowledge. Civilization was not built in isolation. Even in the earliest times, humans were linked by networks of cooperation, communication, and shared purpose. This is a pattern we continue to see across the world. Civilizations are strengthened not only by what is built within their borders, but by the connections they maintain with neighbors. Despite its sophistication, Norte Chico remains enigmatic. We know of its structures, its agricultural innovations, its ceremonial spaces. Yet we know very little about the daily lives, beliefs, and stories of the people who live there. Their language, their thoughts, and their inner worlds remain beyond reach, preserved only in the silent stones and the faint imprint of community planning. The decline of Norte Chico offers another subtle lesson about the cycles of civilization. Life is fragile yet resilient. Communities rise, adapt, and sometimes fade, leaving behind not only physical traces but also lessons for future generations. The influence of Norte Chico is detectable in later Andean civilizations, in techniques of agriculture, urban planning, and social organization. The city's legacy survived not in grand narratives, but in the enduring patterns of human adaptation. And imagine this quietly. Thousands of years later, modern archaeologists uncover these remnants. Layers of soil are brushed away, pyramids are measured, and pathways mapped. Slowly, the lives of these people begin to take shape in our understanding. Yet the process is never complete. Each discovery opens more questions than it answers, inviting reflection, imagination, and curiosity. The people of Norte Chico were remarkably sustainable. Their use of rivers, irrigation, and agriculture reflects a deep understanding of environmental balance. They did not exploit the land recklessly. Their lives were tied to seasonal rhythms, to the cycles of the river and the sea. In many ways, their civilization thrived quietly, in harmony with nature, a pattern that continues to inspire reflection on how humans can interact responsibly with their environment. How many other sophisticated, peaceful civilizations existed long before the historical record caught up to them? For every Norte Chico, Carol, or Murgar, countless communities may have thrived quietly, leaving faint traces in soil, stone, and memory. Human history stretches far deeper than most of us realize, filled with mysteries waiting patiently for discovery. And as you let that thought settle, imagine the coastal plains of northern Peru millennia ago. Families tending crops, artisans crafting cotton nets, children running through sunken plazas, elders guiding rituals under the open sky. Imagine their lives unfolding quietly, harmoniously, and meaningfully. Their civilization may have faded, but its essence, ingenuity, community, and harmony with nature, endures, carried forward through human memory and imagination. And in that quiet reflection, there is comfort. History is not lost. It is simply waiting for us to uncover, understand, and appreciate it, layer by layer, story by story. The mysterious civilization of Giraffe. Far across the deserts and rivers of southeastern Iran lies a civilization that has long remained in the shadows of history, waiting quietly for modern discovery. This is Giraffe, an enigmatic culture flourishing over 5,000 years ago, along the Halil River. Its story is both fascinating and mysterious, offering glimpses into an advanced society whose achievements are only beginning to be understood. Giraffe challenges the way we think about early civilizations. Unlike Mesopotamia or the Indus Valley, it was largely unknown until the late 20th century, when archaeologists uncovered vast quantities of artifacts. including intricately carved stone vessels, pottery, and jewelry. Each item hints at a sophisticated society with artistic sensibility, spiritual depth, and an eye for detail. One of the first questions we might ask is this: how could such a civilization exist with such advanced craftsmanship, yet remain almost invisible to history for millennia? The answer lies partly in geography. Jiroft was located in a region that was both isolated by desert and shaped by fertile river valleys. This combination created a society capable of innovation and self-sufficiency, yet not easily noticed by neighboring civilizations or recorded in distant histories. And the artifacts themselves are quietly astonishing. Stone vessels, carved with intricate animal motifs, human figures, and geometric patterns, reveal not only technical skill but also a symbolic language. Some researchers suggest these carvings may represent myths, rituals, or even early forms of storytelling. Imagine holding one of these vessels and feeling the care, precision, and thought of an artisan who lived thousands of years ago. The objects are more than decoration. They are messages from the past, waiting for interpretation. Excavations reveal large mud-brick buildings, fortifications, and platforms suggesting a city with social organization and communal spaces. Unlike more famous civilizations, Jiroft's development does not emphasize monumental rulers or palaces. Instead, it appears to have valued functional urban spaces, community coordination, and cultural expression. What can a civilization teach us when its stories are preserved not in texts, but in art, tools, and architecture? Jiroft reminds us that human ingenuity is expressed in many forms, and not all of them require writing to communicate complexity, belief, or creativity. Trade also played a subtle but important role in Jiroft. Archaeologists have found evidence of long-distance commerce, including lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and shells from distant coasts. Even in a desert environment, this society was connected to a broader world, sharing materials, ideas, and cultural practices. These connections likely fueled both artistic innovation and economic stability, demonstrating that ancient humans thrived through collaboration, curiosity, and openness. Another quietly fascinating detail is the scale and intricacy of Jiroft's stone vessels. Many of these items are cylindrical, carved from chlorite or other soft stones, and feature scenes of humans, animals, and hybrid creatures. Some depict ritualistic activities, while others may represent cosmological beliefs. Each vessel is an insight into the symbolic thinking of a society whose written language, if it ever existed, has yet to be found. And here is a subtle, reflective hook. How many advanced civilizations have disappeared quietly, leaving only whispers in the archaeological record? For every society like Jiroft, countless others may have existed, innovated, and vanished long before modern discovery. Human history, in its vastness, is far richer than the pages of textbooks suggest. Art, craft, and ritual intertwine in Jiroft in ways that captivate the imagination. Some vessels display scenes of humans interacting with hybrid animals, possibly symbolic of spiritual or mythological beliefs. Others show ceremonial practices, perhaps linked to seasonal cycles or communal events. Even without text, these artifacts convey meaning, emotion, and societal values. They are, in essence, a language carved in stone, speaking across millennia. And the urban layout of Jiroft further reinforces its sophistication. Archaeologists have uncovered structures arranged with intention, platforms for ceremonial or administrative purposes, residential spaces, and areas that may have served as markets or workshops. Such organization hints at a society that understood hierarchy, community coordination, and spatial planning. It is remarkable to consider the human intellect and social cooperation necessary to achieve this, all without written instruction manuals or modern technology. Another fascinating element is the continuity of artistic motifs. Carvings of animals, mythical beings, and abstract patterns recur throughout Giraffe's artifacts, suggesting shared cultural symbolism and possibly religious or ceremonial importance. Imagine how these patterns connected communities, reinforced beliefs, and expressed identity in ways far beyond mere decoration. Even thousands of years later, we can sense their aesthetic and cultural impact. Trade, art, and urban planning converge in Giraffe to reveal a civilization that was both connected and self-reliant. Cotton, pottery, and carved stones were produced locally, yet objects from distant lands show awareness of a broader network. The people of Giraffe were observers, makers, and participants in a world that stretched far beyond their city. This duality of local ingenuity and global awareness is quietly inspiring, reminding us that human creativity thrives both within communities and through external connection. And yet, despite its sophistication, Giraffe vanished quietly. Its stones and artifacts remained hidden beneath layers of soil until rediscovered by modern archaeologists. The civilization's stories were preserved not in chronicles or inscriptions, but in material culture, silent, enduring, and waiting patiently to be understood. What does it mean for a civilization to leave no written record, yet influence generations to come? Giraffe demonstrates that human history is not only about written narratives. It is also about creativity, social coordination, adaptation, and subtle innovations that ripple through time. Its impact continues, even if the people themselves have long since disappeared. And so, as we picture Giraffe today, we imagine artisans carefully carving vessels, families working together in mud brick homes, and communities organizing rituals in ceremonial plazas. Life was lived quietly, harmoniously, and meaningfully. Its legacy persists not in stories told by scribes, but in the enduring evidence of human intellect, collaboration, and expression. Finally, a gentle thought to carry with you. Giraffe is a reminder that history is vast and layered. Civilizations rise and fall quietly, yet their influence can endure across time and space. Every artifact, every ruin, and every stone is a message from the past, patiently awaiting recognition. The enigmatic civilization of the Indus Valley, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. As we journey further into the mysteries of humanity's lost civilizations, we arrive at one of the most fascinating and enduring enigmas of the ancient world, the Indus Valley Civilization. Flourishing between approximately 2600 BCE and 1900 BCE, it stretched across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Unlike many early civilizations, the Indus Valley cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were remarkable not only for their scale and sophistication, but for the enduring mysteries they left behind. Imagine for a moment a city laid out with precision, homes arranged in grid patterns, streets intersecting at perfect right angles. Advanced drainage systems carried waste away efficiently, ensuring public hygiene, while wells provided clean water to each household. Such organization is astounding for a civilization that existed more than 4 millennia ago. And yet, despite all this, there is still no definitive understanding of their language or script. Their writing system remains undeciphered, leaving their voices largely silent across the ages. How did a society achieve such high levels of urban planning, trade, and craft, yet leave behind no readable records of its thoughts, stories, or governance? The Indus Valley civilization challenges our assumptions about history, reminding us that human ingenuity is not always documented in ways we can immediately understand. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were vibrant centers of daily life. Houses were built from baked brick, many with 2 stories and courtyards, suggesting that families were structured, organized, and interconnected. Archaeologists have discovered granaries, public baths, and marketplaces, indicating that the society placed a premium on both functionality and communal life. Imagine walking along these streets, children playing in the courtyards, merchants exchanging goods, artisans crafting pottery. A society both bustling and orderly, yet organized with a calm, methodical precision. One of the most fascinating features of Mohenjo-daro is the Great Bath, a massive public water reservoir. Its construction indicates not just practical engineering skills, but also a sense of ritual or communal significance. Water may have played a spiritual role, perhaps as a site for purification or ceremony. Imagine the care and planning required to build such a structure, a testament to their ingenuity and attention to both social and spiritual life. And then there is the question of trade. The Indus Valley civilization maintained extensive networks with distant regions, including Mesopotamia. Carnelian beads, seals, and other goods were exchanged across hundreds of miles, demonstrating that even in this early era, humans sought connection, commerce, and cultural exchange. Trade was not merely economic. It was a conduit for ideas, techniques, and shared knowledge, a subtle yet powerful engine of civilization. But the most striking mystery remains the writing system. Thousands of inscribed seals have been found, often depicting animals, symbols, and abstract motifs. And yet, despite decades of study, scholars have been unable to decipher the script. What messages did these symbols carry? Were they administrative records, religious texts, or something else entirely? We may never know, but the unanswered questions are part of what makes the Indus Valley so compelling. And consider this quietly. A civilization capable of remarkable urban planning, engineering, and trade, yet leaving no readable words behind. It forces us to reflect on the limits of our understanding and the many forms human knowledge can take. Written records are not the only way to transmit culture. Architecture, art, and material culture also preserve human thought and ingenuity. Another remarkable aspect is the apparent absence of overt hierarchy or monumental rulers. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, where palaces and tombs dominate the archaeological record, the Indus Valley cities show little evidence of kings or elite rulers. Homes were relatively uniform, public structures served communal purposes, and society appears to have functioned with a degree of egalitarian organization. This raises a quiet, intriguing question. Could early civilization thrive without centralized authority, relying instead on cooperation and shared norms? The craftsmanship of the Indus Valley is another source of wonder. Pottery, beads, jewelry, and figurines demonstrate a combination of utility and artistic expression. beads made from semi-precious stones, pottery decorated with geometric patterns, and small statues of humans and animals reveal a society attentive to both detail and beauty. Even without readable texts, their aesthetic sensibility speaks across millennia, conveying values, beliefs, and creativity. And then there is the matter of their eventual decline. Around 1900 BCE, the cities began to wane, and the once thriving settlements were largely abandoned. Scholars propose several possible causes: changes in the course of rivers, climate shifts, ecological degradation, or disruptions in trade networks. There is no evidence of large-scale conflict or invasion. Like other lost civilizations we have explored, the Indus Valley faded gently, not in dramatic collapse, but in quiet dispersal. Families moved, communities dissolved, and the physical structures were gradually reclaimed by the land. Many civilizations vanish without dramatic cataclysms, leaving only traces for us to rediscover. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro remind us that human history is a vast tapestry, filled with civilizations that rise, flourish, and slowly transform or fade, leaving whispers of their existence for future generations to interpret. And yet, the legacy of the Indus Valley endures. Agricultural techniques, urban planning, trade practices, and artisanal skills influenced later cultures in South Asia. Knowledge survived not through texts, but through practice, adaptation, and memory. In this sense, the civilization continues to shape human society, even as its people disappeared centuries ago. The recurring mysteries invite endless curiosity. Why did their script remain undeciphered? What were the spiritual beliefs behind the Great Bath? How did they coordinate labor so efficiently without apparent centralized authority? Every answer we uncover leads to further questions, keeping our fascination alive. And then there is the human element, imagining the daily lives of those who lived in these ancient cities. Parents teaching children, artisans crafting jewelry and pottery, farmers tending crops, merchants trading goods. Life was both ordinary and extraordinary, structured yet creative. The human experience remains recognizable across millennia, a comforting reminder of continuity amid change. Another quiet hook emerges when considering the Indus Valley's emphasis on public infrastructure. Sophisticated drainage systems, wells, and organized street layouts demonstrate foresight, communal responsibility, and concern for hygiene and health. Such urban planning reflects values that are remarkably advanced, even by modern standards. Their understanding of how to create sustainable, livable cities is a legacy that continues to inspire and instruct. Trade, artistry, urban design, and ritual all converge to reveal a civilization both extraordinary and approachable. While the Indus Valley remains enigmatic, the evidence we have allows us to imagine a society that thrived, adapted, and created a way of life marked by intelligence, cooperation, and aesthetic sensibility. The Indus Valley civilization is a reminder that human innovation and community are timeless. Civilization does not always rise in dramatic, easily recorded events. Often, it grows quietly, thoughtfully, and collaboratively, leaving traces that invite reflection and curiosity. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro whisper across millennia, inviting us to imagine lives lived with care, creativity, and enduring impact. And as we picture the streets, houses, and plazas today, it is possible to feel a sense of connection across time, to recognize the continuity of human endeavor, the persistence of ingenuity, and the gentle resilience of communities. Even as the cities vanished, their spirit lingers, reminding us that history is vast, layered, and alive, patiently waiting for us to discover and contemplate its mysteries. The lost civilization of ancient Nubia and Kush. As our journey through humanity's lost civilizations draws to a close, we turn our attention to a region that has long fascinated historians. The lands along the Nile south of Egypt, known historically as Nubia, later home to the powerful kingdom of Kush. For millennia, Nubia and Kush were vibrant centers of culture, trade, and influence. Yet their stories are often overshadowed by the grandeur of their northern neighbors. Tonight, we explore the quiet magnificence, resilience, and mystery of these African civilizations. Imagine, softly, a river valley fertile and wide, stretching beyond the horizon. Along its banks, settlements grow with mud-brick homes, bustling marketplaces, and temples rising in reverence to deities both local and shared with Egypt. People cultivate wheat, barley, and sorghum, while cattle and goats graze nearby. Trade networks extend both north and south, connecting communities along the Nile and beyond. Life here is structured, interconnected, and harmonious, yet full of the human vitality we have seen in every great civilization. Nubia's history stretches back thousands of years, long before the rise of the Egyptian dynasties. Archaeological evidence shows settlements as early as 3500 BCE, indicating an enduring and sophisticated society. These communities developed metallurgy, crafting tools and ornaments from copper and later iron. Their artisans were skilled in pottery, beadmaking, and stone carving, demonstrating both practical skill and artistic sensibility. Even before Kushite kingdoms emerged, Nubians were innovators, shaping their environment and culture with intelligence and care. How did a civilization so rich in culture, art, and trade remain largely invisible in mainstream historical narratives? The story of Nubia reminds us that history is often filtered by perspective. By the first millennium BCE, the kingdom of Kush rose to prominence, establishing powerful cities like Kerma, Napata, and later Meroe. These cities were centers of trade, religion, and governance. Kerma, the earliest of these, flourished as a hub connecting sub-Saharan Africa with Egypt. It was a center of wealth and culture, renowned for its architecture and elaborate burial practices. Imagine large tumulus tombs rising from the desert sands, each a testament to the skill, status, and beliefs of those interred within. Meroe, farther south, became famous for its iron production. The kingdom harnessed this technology not only for tools and weapons but as a cornerstone of trade. Its artisans produced jewelry, ceramics, and finely crafted objects, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of aesthetics and craft. The city thrived as a center of commerce, connecting Africa to the Mediterranean and Middle East. The people of Meroe built with vision, demonstrating ingenuity that extended far beyond mere survival. And then there is Nubia's relationship with Egypt, which adds layers of complexity to its history. At times, Nubia was conquered, at other times it conquered, influencing Egyptian culture, religion, and politics. The Kushite pharaohs, ruling as Egypt's 25th dynasty, brought their own traditions into the northern kingdom, blending cultures in ways both subtle and profound. Imagine the fusion of Nubian and Egyptian art, architecture, and ritual, a cross-cultural dialogue stretching across centuries. Trade was another defining feature of Nubian and Kushite civilization. Gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animals moved along the Nile, connecting regions and fueling both economic prosperity and cultural exchange. This network demonstrates that even in ancient times, humans understood the value of connection, communication, and shared resources. The civilization thrived not in isolation but in collaboration, adapting to changing conditions while maintaining stability. Religion played a central role in daily life and governance. Temples were dedicated to both local deities and Egyptian gods, suggesting a syncretic spiritual worldview. Rituals, offerings, and ceremonies reinforced community bonds, societal order, and a sense of purpose. Even the burial practices, from grand tumulus tombs at Kerma to elaborate pyramids at Meroe, reflected deeply held beliefs about life, death, and the afterlife. Each tomb, each ceremonial object, tells a story of devotion, status, and culture, preserved quietly in stone and earth. Another fascinating element is Nubia's pyramids, often smaller than those of Egypt but equally symbolic. The Kushites constructed hundreds of pyramids at sites like Meroe, using them as tombs for royalty and nobility. Their size may differ, but their purpose, to honor the dead, symbolize power, and connect with the divine, echoes the universal human need for remembrance, continuity, and spiritual expression. Imagine the quiet desert winds brushing against these stones, centuries after the ceremonies concluded, leaving only the echo of human intention and belief. And yet, as with so many civilizations we've explored, Nubia and Kush eventually declined. The reasons are layered: changing trade routes, environmental shifts, invasions, and the slow movement of populations. But unlike sudden destruction, this decline was gradual. Cities emptied, monuments weathered, and knowledge passed subtly into neighboring societies. In their quiet dispersal, they leave a message that history is as much about endurance as it is about impermanence. How many great civilizations have faded without dramatic collapse, leaving only subtle traces of their existence? Nubia's story is a gentle reminder that history is often nonlinear, full of quiet rise and fall, and that human ingenuity persists even when visibility diminishes. Art and craftsmanship offer another window into the soul of the civilization. Nubian jewelry, pottery, and sculptures reveal a refined aesthetic, demonstrating technical skill and cultural expression. Beads, figurines, and ceremonial objects indicate a society attentive to both beauty and function. And even without abundant written records, these artifacts speak volumes, communicating social structure, beliefs, and creativity across time. Education, technology, and knowledge were central to the kingdom's endurance. Kushite blacksmiths mastered iron production, architects engineered pyramids and temples, and farmers optimized irrigation and agriculture along the Nile. These skills were passed from generation to generation, quietly building resilience and adaptability. Civilization, in this sense, is an inheritance of knowledge, culture, and problem-solving, layered, subtle, and cumulative. And as we consider Nubia's legacy, another reflection emerges. Civilizations often leave influence far beyond their visible remnants. Even when political power wanes, cultural practices, artistic styles, religious beliefs, and technological knowledge continue to shape neighboring societies. Nubia and Kush remind us that human impact is rarely confined to borders or time frames. It flows, diffuses, and endures in unexpected ways. Imagine walking softly through the ruins of Meroe today. The pyramids rise from the sand like ancient sentinels. Pottery fragments scatter across the ground. Stone sculptures, weathered but dignified, hint at the lives, beliefs, and aspirations of people long gone. Families thrived, artisans created, rulers governed, and communities worshipped. Life, in all its complexity and subtlety, unfolded in these desert plains, leaving traces that reach across millennia to speak to us now. And then there is the quiet lesson of resilience. Despite being overshadowed by Egypt in popular memory, Nubia and Kush endured for thousands of years, weathering environmental challenges, invasions, and shifting political landscapes. Their culture adapted, persisted, and evolved, a testament to human ingenuity and the power of civilization to endure in forms both visible and invisible. Finally, as we close our journey through the lost civilizations of humanity, a gentle reflection emerges. History is vast, layered, and often hidden. From Murgar to Kerala, from Norte Chico to Giraffe, and from Harappa to Nubia, countless societies thrived quietly, innovating, collaborating, and leaving traces for future generations. They remind us that human ingenuity, creativity, and resilience are timeless, and that even when civilizations vanish physically, their influence endures in subtle, enduring ways. And as you imagine the Nile flowing gently through Nubia, families tending fields, artisans crafting objects, children playing along the riverbank, and elders guiding rituals, there is a profound sense of connection. Across time and space, the human story continues, a tapestry of rise, flourishing, quiet decline, and enduring legacy. Each civilization we've explored is a whisper from the past, inviting contemplation, curiosity, and appreciation for the remarkable journey of humanity. And so, tonight, as we reflect on these lost civilizations, let us carry a sense of calm awe. History is not only about grand monuments or famous empires. It is about the quiet, cumulative work of countless communities, a testament to resilience, creativity, and the enduring spirit of humankind.